Hey you guys, Brandy here. So before we get into tonight's story, I wanted to say a very quick thank you to a loyal subscriber of mine who sent me the two guardian candles, or guardian angel candles rather, that you see behind me. I really appreciate that, and it definitely helps me to feel more protected. Since I've started researching and digging a lot deeper into these cases, I don't know if it's that I'm paying more attention, but it seems like there have been, the activity that I have going on around here at the moment has seemingly picked up just a bit. So every little bit counts, and I appreciate it. So thank you very much. It's always nice to know that somebody's thinking about your safety. And a lot of people will say when you talk about the paranormal that it'll bring it to your doorstep. That may be true. I don't know. Who am I? Stranger things have definitely happened. So let's go ahead and get on with part 2 of the Ammons Family Haunting. Tonight we're going to be discussing the Zach Bagans documentary, The Demon House. I watched it when it first came out. I highly anticipated it, and it took 3 years to make, you guys. And it turns out that there is a reason for that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. I will be linking part 1 down in the description box. I don't think this episode can stand on its own, so you may want to go back and watch that one before you watch this one. And that one's kind of long, so grab a snack and get really comfortable. Alrighty, here we go, guys. Alrighty, so in 2014, there is Zach, and he finds himself face to face with a 12-foot horn-hooved demon. It was a very scary creature, and this demon exhales a black smoke, and Zach is forced to inhale it and take that into his body. He was very thankful to realize when he woke with a start that it was simply a dream, but it was one of those that kind of stuck with him. And Zach is really in tune to his dreams. He feels like there are a lot of things that you can learn from them, and he also feels like it is a way for the paranormal, whatever that may be, to be able to communicate with people a bit easier. And this was several weeks prior to the Ammons family story coming out. So it was a few days later that it actually hit the TV and print media, and that's when Zach saw it. And he says immediately when he saw the story, he felt a connection to it, to the house. He thought that it had something to do with this dream, and it was kind of like a puzzle, and he felt the need to figure it out. He got in touch with local real estate agents who put him in touch with Mr. Charles Reed, the landlord. And Mr. Reed, especially since the story came out, he couldn't sell the home. He couldn't keep renters in the home. So when he was contacted by Zach, it was kind of a godsend. They negotiated the price of, 30, some sources say 30,000, some other sources say 35,000. But regardless, Zach was now the proud owner of the Carolina Street home and all of its 200 demons. Not only was the house demon infested, but it was also taken over by a group of squatters, and they had to be cleared out before the investigating could begin. Keep that in mind because that will be important for later. Zach smudged the property with some well-placed $20 bills, and the squatters happily departed. He excitedly gathered his team. They packed up and they headed to Gary, Indiana. Now, his plan for the home was to investigate it and find out what this connection was that he had with it, first of all. And then I think that he was going to, some sources actually, say that he had planned on keeping it as sort of a haunted attraction for other teams to investigate, maybe a destination Verbo or B&B, if you will, haunted. When they got there, he got a phone call from a very good friend of his, a well-known psychic, Mr. Chris Fleck, And Chris warned him not to go to the house. He warned Zach to stay away. He said that there was a 12-foot demon, horned demon. He actually called it a goat demon that was guarding the property. And he said that it was very powerful and it was extremely evil. And Zach really wasn't a match for this thing. And so he just needed not to go. Of course, you know, this just further excited Zach. And since he told nobody about this dream of the goat demon, it kind of strengthened his resolve to figure out what was going on, because obviously his dream and this connection that he felt was backed up by this psychic who Zach trusted. He tracked down Latoya at her new home in Indianapolis, and after several phone calls that went unanswered and unreturned, Zach loaded up in the SUV and he went and knocked on Latoya's door. Latoya's brother Kevin met Zach at the door and said that Latoya and Rosa did get his phone calls, but they refused to speak to him. They said that they didn't want anything to do with the home, anybody that owned the home, anybody that had even been to the home. They were completely unwilling to invite that evil back into their lives. And the fact that Zach owned the home, had just been inside the home, they definitely didn't want anything to do with him. I'm going to have to be a Debbie Downer at this point, because this was also the time that Latoya and her mother Rosa, and I believe Father Mike, had sold the rights to their story to an Evergreen Media Holdings film company or media company, I believe. And generally in those contracts, they have very strict clauses about the party who they purchase the rights from speaking about their story, especially to anybody else, because, you know, it's exclusive rights. They want to do it before anybody else. So that meant that she couldn't take part in Zach's documentary. So I do know in the documentary, because I watched it, that there was a producer, and Zach never gives his name, but he kind of made Zach's life hell because he didn't want him to make the documentary. He wanted to be able to make one himself. And so he tried everything that he could to actually get Zach to stop filming. But it didn't go over in his favor. So after Latoya and Rosa refused to see Zach, her brother Kevin did. And they hopped in the SUV and they drove around for a little while Zach did a interview with Kevin. And Kevin said that there had been several times that he had been in the house and that he had witnessed things, especially the things that had happened with the kids. He had told Zach about one occasion where he had seen his nephew picked up forcefully and thrown into a wall. He said that he heard the thump and that his nephew hit it with a lot of force. He said that one time Rosa and he were taking the children to a park or some kind of outing, and just out of the blue in the back seat they started to attack each other, like really trying to hurt each other. And Kevin pulled them from the car. And he had tried to break them up. And when Rosa stepped in to try to help them, I believe the 7-year-old looked at her and told Rosa, "Get your hands off me, you old bitch." And Kevin said he was taken aback by this because the kids, all 3 kids, were always well behaved. They were always very respectful, especially to their grandmother. And this was totally out of character and caught him off guard. After Kevin spent some time with Zach and Zach took him home, Latoya and Rosa wouldn't let him back in the house. They said that he had opened himself up to the evil from the Gary home just by being around Zach. And so Kevin had to find another place to sleep for a few nights until the evil wore off, I guess. After talking to Kevin, Kevin kind of gave Zach the numbers and an in to be able to contact everybody else that had been associated with the house, such as Captain Austin, Valerie Washington, Father Mike, and anybody else that he thought that he needed to speak to. Um, Charles Reed, at this time, I'm sorry, you guys. I have my notes here. At this time, Charles Reed also had gone to the media and told the media that he had never seen anything paranormal in the house. He said that he just thought it was absolutely crazy. Also, LaToya's stepmother came forward at this time and said it was all one big hoax. She was really upset that her family had been drawn into this. She said it was one big hoax, that nobody had ever experienced any kind of demonic activity that was in her family, either inside this home, outside the home, or anywhere else. There was no demons that was trying to, or I'm sorry, there were no demons that were trying to get to LaToya or her kids. And everything was just crazy. The family was crazy. LaToya was crazy. And that was kind of bad. You know what I mean? It's like, you're her stepmother, so why would you come out and call her crazy? There's documented evidence of it. So is everybody connected to the case crazy? Because it wasn't just LaToya that saw these things. And then the whole thing about Charles Reed, it's funny how he waited to say those kinds of things until after he sold the house to Zach. You know, I guess he wanted to make sure that he got some money before he came out and said that it wasn't haunted, considering the fact that it was a ghost investigator that was interested in buying it. And the squatters also said that the time that they spent inside the home, nothing had ever happened to them either, except for one. One man stepped forward and told Zach that he had seen some shit, but he refused to say exactly what said shit was until Zach paid him more money. And we never find out exactly what he saw, if anything, because I don't think Zach fell for it. Also at the time, that photo, I'll put it on the screen here, that was allegedly taken by Captain Austin. You had people that came out and said that that was faked, that it wasn't real. I personally don't know if it was or not, but Captain Austin insisted that there was nobody standing in the window at the time that he took the picture. Now, maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe it was a trick of light and shadow with the trees and everything. I don't know, but it did appear to be something in there. And the photo hadn't been tampered with in any way. So you can do with that what you will. You know, kind of make your own judgment about that. Zach decided to have the house inspected, and they again found mold, asbestos, and carbon monoxide, which of course would account for LaToya's symptoms of being sick and ill, or anybody else that felt ill when they spent time inside of the home. And they could definitely account for any kind of delusions or hallucinations that anybody suffered after spending time in the home. And, you know, you have some people that are more sensitive to things like that than others. So, you know, one person may be in the house overnight and they see these horrible, terrifying things. It may take somebody a bit longer or somebody a bit shorter amount of time to begin to hallucinate. Zach, after finding that out, kind of thought, well, I guess I was duped because this kind of sounds like a load of crap. And then he meets a woman named Mika. Now, Mika lived with her mother inside the home in the 90s when she was a teenager. She brought her children to the home because, you know, after all the news reports and everything, they wanted to see it. And so, you know, she wanted to meet and kind of talk with Zach and tell Zach that when she was in the house, they did have some paranormal experiences. She had told Zach that she had never gone into the basement. And she agreed that she would go down with Zach. And, you know, at first when I heard that, I was like, you lived there and you never went down into the basement, but there's a reason for that. She agreed to go down with Zach, and down they went. When they get to the bottom of the stairs, Mika kind of trips a little bit, or it looks like it. And she turns around and she tells one of her kids, "Hey, stop kicking me." This was caught on static cam, and you can see Latoya's knee kind of buckle. Like when somebody kind of kicks you in the back of your knee and your leg just kind of folds a little bit. You see on the static camera where this happens to her. But nobody was near her. Her children didn't touch her. Nobody kicked her. But she felt the sensation of being kicked in the back of the leg, and it did buckle. She then revealed to Zach why she never went into the basement. Mika had an older brother, and he lived in the basement. His bedroom was located in the back of it. Mika had been having really bad dreams, and it was kind of a premonition. She felt that somebody that she knew, one of her loved ones, was going to pass away soon, and she had tried to tell her mother about it, but of course her mother really didn't believe her. And it was about a week later, her brother was actually shot and didn't make it. So after that, Mika refused to ever go down there again. She got really upset after telling Zach this, and she had to go back upstairs. Zach was left with her son, and he looks at Zach, and you can tell that the kid is really scared. And he asked Zach, "I really am scared now that we're here. I'm scared the ghost is going to follow us home. Is that possible?" Because he sees Zach, and Zach is the ghost expert. And as soon as he asked Zach, "Are the demons going to follow us home now?" upstairs on Mika's microphone that's attached to her clothing, you hear a voice come through, and the voice says, "Run, Latoya." Now, Latoya is nowhere near the home. It's Mika and her two children, a boy and a girl. And this thing, whatever it is telling her to run, or telling Latoya to run. Now, keep in mind, Father Mike thought that the house was cursed by the wife of one of Latoya's ex-boyfriends. So if she did some kind of conjuring, or if she placed the curse on this home through some kind of ritual, and Latoya would have been the target, maybe this thing thought any female in the home was Latoya. I'm not really sure how those things work. I would think that if there was a curse placed on Latoya, that's who it would follow. It would be a targeted curse, maybe, and not necessarily on the home, but on Latoya. I could be wrong. I don't know. She did have the exorcism, so maybe it fell off of her and it ended up staying at the home. After Mika left, the crew set up an altar in the basement, and when they did this, Zach all of a sudden became extremely aggressive. Admittedly, if you're familiar with the Ghost Adventure series, you know that anytime Zach is really affected by the paranormal, that's how he tends to get. He tends to get very aggressive. It's either really aggressive or really emotional. That's how it seems to affect him most often. He actually shoved one of the crew's member and yelled at him to get the F out. This was caught on static cameras that they have posted throughout the house. They try to put a couple of cameras in each room to try to get different angles. I appreciate that, because a lot of times the static cams will capture some kind of evidence that they won't see. That'll be coming up here shortly. After this, Zach, he just kind of felt off. He didn't really feel very good, but he didn't have any memory of doing this. He actually shoved one of the crew members. They got him out of the house and put him in the SUV to try to take him for a drive just to clear his head for a little bit. When they were out, a neighbor called and told Zach that somebody was trying to break into the house. When Zach got there, the police were already there, and you kind of hear the cops talking to him on the documentary about the house, and they were like, we're not going in there. We looked around. We didn't see anybody, but you couldn't pay us to go inside that house. And they don't. Which is odd to me, because what if there was somebody in the house? What if somebody had broken into the house? Zach goes in and the cops refuse to check it out. So somebody comes out of the closet and all of a sudden no more Zach, you know? That's just kind of weird. They were definitely freaked out. Later, Zach talked to Valerie Washington. You will remember Valerie was the very first caseworker that met the family at the hospital when they were called in, when CPS was called in by the doctors and the rest of the medical staff. Valerie Washington is also the one that witnessed LaToya's son walking up the wall backwards across the ceiling and doing a backflip, landing in front of his grandmother. She's also the one that decided it would be best to take the children because LaToya had a mental illness, instead of admitting that something else was going on at the time. She also, even though she worked with violent crimes that concerned children, and she had seen a lot of horrible things, for some reason, after this particular incident, Valerie completely left the Child Protective Services Division, or the DCFS, and she didn't do that kind of work again. That Valerie Washington, I'm kind of bitter about that, in case you can't tell. So Zach meets with her, and she recalled the incident to Zach. She said that afterwards she had to see a psychiatrist in order to process the trauma that she received from witnessing the event. But she caused all kinds of headaches for LaToya and her family. However, this event was so traumatic for her that she had to go see a psychiatrist, and it took her a very long time to process her trauma from just witnessing the event. Can you imagine what it would have taken if she had to actually go through the same things that the Ammons family had to go through? She said that she honestly believed that something that was not normal was going on in that house and with that family. She told Zach that even though she had investigated child unalivings and instances of horrific ABUSE, YouTube doesn't like certain words, and neglect, nothing had ever affected her like that case. Not only did it have lasting mental effects on Valerie, but she also told Zach that it had a lot of other effects on a lot of people that had come in contact with the home, especially those that had ever been in the home for any amount of time. We'll get to that. I always get ahead of myself. Anyway, that had been in the home for any amount of time. You remember Samantha Illick. She was the second caseworker, the woman that touched the thick liquid that was exuded from the wall and it burned her fingers. It turns out not only did it burn her fingers and discolor them for a short while, but she'd also suffered many accidents within 30 days of being in the home. The first thing that happened to her was she broke her hand hitting a table. The second thing that happened was she broke her ankle when she was walking, and she just kind of twisted it in the wrong direction, and it was a pretty bad break. She also suffered third-degree burns from a motorcycle accident that she had gotten into, as well as broke 3 of her ribs falling off a jet ski. She was definitely convinced that she had been marked by whatever evil was in the house, and I'm going to agree with her because that is a lot. She wasn't the only one that suffered this bad luck after being in the house. Father Mike told Zach that he had been riding his bike before he performed the third and last exorcism on LaToya. And he said it was a really weird incident. And he noticed that he was in town, and he noticed that everything got really, really quiet. And he began to pay attention to the people that were around him. And he said everybody on the street, they had turned to stare at him, and their expressions were completely, expressionless, and they just stared at him. All of a sudden, his seat tilted 45 degrees, and he crashed his bike. The second that he hit the ground, everything went back to normal. People started walking around, and everything was fine. And he wasn't hurt. But he believed that was the forces inside of the house trying to get him to where he could not perform the third exorcism, the one that eventually freed LaToya. 3 days after meeting with Zach, Captain Austin had a very bad fall. And I say fall, we'll say fall in quotations, because Captain Austin says that he somehow found himself 3 feet in the air while walking down the sidewalk in the winter, and he actually did a complete somersault. He landed on the back of his head that began to gush blood, and he was actually unconscious for about a minute or so. He had to go to the ER for that one. He was also shot in a home invasion after being inside the Ammons house. Thankfully, he survived with no lasting effects from that. The home inspector, oh my gosh, the guy that Zach hired to come and inspect the house for the mold and the toxins and everything, he was almost killed by a falling tree that same day that he investigated the house on his way home. That night, after he investigated the house, he woke up unable to breathe. He said that it felt like something was choking him, hands around his neck, but there was nobody there. He woke up, he looked around, and there was nobody else in his home but him. Not long after those things, he was actually diagnosed with cancer. So I would think, that's definitely bad luck. The worst kind of luck, in my opinion. A husband and wife team that Zach had worked with for many, many years, Mark and Debbie Constantino. They were actually a very famous couple. They were famous for being able to communicate with spirits and catching EVPs on a recorder. And the cool thing about it is, I'll see if I can find any kind of recordings that they did. I may not be able to, and you'll find out why in a moment. Anyway, it was almost like they're carrying on a two-way conversation with the spirit in real time. It's really awesome. But Debbie had told Zach that she would do her best to remotely have a conversation with whatever entity was inside the Gary house. And they've been working together so long, Zach, the Ghost Adventures crew, and the Constantinos, that Zach kind of viewed them to be sort of a family, part of his family. He does that a lot with people that he works with. And then after Debbie told him that she would try to contact whatever was in the house and see what she could pick up, she did, and she taped it. She picked up a very, very deep voice, and it said something's wrong. A little while after that, I think a couple of months after she did that for Zach, I don't really know how to put this, because a little while after doing that, Debbie and her roommate were unalived in their apartment by none other than Debbie's husband, Mark, who did that to them, and then himself. He chose to opt out of life. And The paranormal community lost two wonderful people that day. Mark was obviously suffering from mental illness. Some people will say that this definitely had to do with the house. Whatever the case was, it totally destroyed Zach for a very, very long time. Also, on February 20th, 2014, 2 days after they had been inside of the house, Mika calls Zach in a panic. It turns out that her daughter Erica, out of the blue, with no signs of anything having to do with her character that was unusual, kind of had a mental breakdown. She was screaming and yelling at her mother and breaking things around the house. She was telling her mother that she would hurt her. And Erica tried to opt out of life her own self by taking an entire bottle of medication. She also got a bladed weapon and put it through her wrists in kind of a mockery of Christ's crucifixion. They rushed Erica to the hospital where she was saved, and during the trying to get her help and everything, I guess they had to remove her clothing, and they saw that on her back, where there was no way that she could have done it to herself, there was a big number 6 carved into her back. When Zach met with her and her mother Mika, he also invited Father Mike there to see if he could kind of be a spiritual comfort to the family. And when he was talking to Erica, Erica said that she had no memory of that. The only thing that she remembers was that she was just absolutely enraged and nothing could calm her down. Father Mike said that he thought that Erica had an attachment from the home, and he did a blessing over her. At one point during the blessing, Erica's head kind of dropped. She loses consciousness for a moment, and when she woke up, she felt better. She felt like there was something that was taken off of her, and Father Mike said that the attachment had been lifted at that point in time. Oh, this is creepy too, you guys. There is a very famous parapsychologist. And a parapsychologist is a person that studies the field that is concerned with the investigation of evidence of paranormal psychological phenomena such as telepathy, clairvoyance, and psychokinesis. Thank you, Merriam-Webster. Dr. Barry Taft, he's done over 4,500 investigations. He's old school, you guys. He approaches the paranormal from a very scientific standpoint. I don't know if you have ever seen the movie The Entity, but it's based on a true story of a woman named Doris Bither. I've actually thought about getting into that case. I believe the movie was made in the 80s. I could be wrong, but it's a very good movie. I suggest that you watch it if you're into that sort of thing. But he was, and he's also known. Sorry about that, you guys. I don't know what just happened, but yeah. The camera just stopped recording. So as I was saying, Dr. Barry Taft was also one of the ones that went in to investigate the Sharon Tate home on Cielo Drive. They call it the Ammons home, or the Ammons home now. David Ammons. Isn't that odd? It's kind of the same, isn't it? Anyway, he brings Dr. Taft in, and Dr. Taft, when he was there, he hears this dog that was barking aggressively, and that had been reported by some of the people that had also been inside of the home. A static camera actually catches Dr. Taft walking down a hall. He's kind of wandering around the house aimlessly, which is really odd for him because generally he's all business. And behind him, you see this dark, black, thick smoke that's kind of stalking him. He crosses a doorway off camera, and you see this thing cross the doorway too. it kind of flew towards him. And he says that he felt very, very sick and he had to get out. And he actually did get out of the house and go sit outside for a little bit. Zach took the footage and had it analyzed by an engineer that had worked for NASA. And the engineer said that it was not a camera artifact or any interference on the camera, that it was something real that was actually in the environment, and the camera captured. And he said it appeared to him that this smoke went into a cameraman when it passed the frame of the doorway. This is important too. The camera's guy, his name was Adam, and at the time that this smoke goes into him, he actually got sick and he had to go lay down. Later on, the rest of the team would find Adam on camera. You see him doing the same thing Dr. Taft did. He's kind of wandering around aimlessly. He goes down into the basement by himself. On film, he's just kind of standing there. It's really odd. And a couple of members of the crew find him and bring him back upstairs. Now, later on that evening, they're all at the hotel, and Adam goes berserk. He's enraged, and normally he's pretty mild-mannered, but he starts screaming and yelling. He's doing it in the hallway. He's being very aggressive. He starts yelling for Zach, over and over and over. He demands to go back to the house. At one point, the elevator opens up, and there's nobody in it, and Adam is having a conversation with somebody like there is somebody there. He says that it reaches out and it touches his hand. It was hard for him to sleep. He actually vomited blood and said that he felt like there was something that was just stabbing him in the stomach over and over and over again. At the same time that this is happening to Adam, one floor up, Dr. Taft hears this loud bell ringing in his left ear, and it wakes him up. He feels really, really nauseous, and he gets up to go to the restroom, and the next thing he knows, he's picking himself up off the floor, and both of his ears are bleeding. After they kind of calmed Adam down a little bit, he told the crew that he saw a goat demon in the elevator, and it was exactly as Zach had described it, and that the reason he was screaming for Zach in the hallway was because Adam realized that the goat demon wasn't there for him, it was there for Zach. And he thought that he got upset again. He told Zach that what Zach needed to do was go back to the home, break the mirror in the bathroom, and take a piece of glass and, with it. And Zach had to send him home. Later they go back and they kind of interview Adam, and he's gotten a 666 tattooed across his hand where the demon had touched him, and he's just not the same anymore. He was very mild-mannered, soft-spoken, and laid back before, and now he's just kind of haunted and aggressive and emotional and just totally different. His friends and family said that after he left that home, he was permanently changed. Dr. Taft flew home, and before he went to the house, the demon house, he was in really good health, great health for a man his age. When he got off the plane, when he flew back home, he was immediately rushed to the emergency room, and his organs had been shutting down. One by one, they were shutting down. He spent a pretty good amount of time in the hospital before they allowed him to to go home, and the doctors were totally baffled. They could not figure out what the reason for this was. At least none that I found, none that they state in the documentary. He recovered, but he still isn't 100%. He's just kind of weakened, and that happened after being in that house. And we're talking this was 2014. This was filmed. Zach, being the way that he is, realized that there was only one thing for him to do, and that was he had to go back to the house himself and stay there alone, confront this evil on its home turf, mano a mano, man to demon, goat demon. And this is what he did. He flew back. He had his crew seal all of the doors and all of the windows. You know, they set up the cameras and everything again, and Zach was the only one in this house. Throughout the night, some things would be caught on camera. For instance, he was sitting in the kitchen and he hears this woman's voice, and the woman says, "That's my baby." He goes and he lays down in the bed, and there's a thumping noise that can be heard, and it just kind of gets louder and louder. At some point during the night, he says that he saw, and this wasn't caught on camera, of course, but he says that he saw a dark figure crawl out of the wall, and as soon as he laid eyes on it, he got an immediate unbearable pain in his eyes. He said it was just sharp and stabbing and awful pain behind his eyes. It was at that point in time where he goes into some kind of fit of rage. He begins destroying everything inside the home, and after this, he has to go see a specialist because he was suffering double vision and his eyes would cross for no reason. He went and he saw a neurologist, and they diagnosed him with diplopia, however it is that you pronounce that. And what that is just constant double vision. And the neurologist, a whole team of neurologists, couldn't figure out why it just happened to him all of a sudden. But there is a corrective surgery, Zach said, but he didn't want to get it because for him, the possibility of him being permanently blinded due to the surgery was just too high. So now he has to wear these prism glasses that correct his vision, and he has to wear those for the rest of his life. It took 3 years to finish the documentary, and nobody could figure out why there were so many problems with this thing. But Zach knew, you know. It was a curse, and it's almost like the house took a piece from anyone that entered it. Sometimes it was a small piece. Sometimes it was everything. You know, Mark and Debbie Constantino, Mika's brother. It took everything. In the end, Zach decided to have the house demolished. And that's exactly what he did. And I'm left asking myself, was that a really good idea? Because Zach is far more knowledgeable about these things than I am. But I sit here and I wonder, did he free the evil or the curse inside the home? Or was it destroyed along with the house? I don't know. But Mr. Bagans just can't help himself. And he kept the basement stairs and some dirt from the spot of earth that was underneath them. He put it into storage after the house was demolished, and then later he took it to his haunted museum in Las Vegas, Nevada, where he resides, and made them into an exhibit. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't help but wonder if the visitors kind of understand that the price of admission isn't the only price that they're going to be paying when they walk by those things. You know, are they still affecting people? I'm sure they're not the only item in the museum that's capable of doing so, but I don't know if I would want to chance that. But I guess when you go visit a place like that, you kind of, decide for yourself that you're more curious than you are careful. So that's it, you guys. That is the case of the Demon House, parts 1 and part 2. let me know in the comment box down below what you think about him destroying the house. You know, I've heard that if you do things like burn a Ouija board, that you could make things worse by releasing the thing that you're talking to that's, you know, using the board or whatever. So I wonder if the house would act as the same thing. I'm not really sure. But do me a favor, and if you liked the video, slap a like on it, and please subscribe to the channel. I really enjoy doing these videos, and I'm really grateful for you guys that comment in the comment box down below and let me know that you like them. It kind of makes it all worthwhile. So, anywho, until next time, I will talk to you guys later. Say your prayers, send out good vibes, and always try to stay in the light. Bye, y'all.